Hello, baby. It's 1986. Welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo episode number 57. My name is Gabe Estel. I'm here with Jonathan Getz, Dennis Levi Leach. How's it going, guys?
Wonderful.
Well,
Bodacious.
as I said, awesome. All right, as I said, we're taking our audience to 1986 tonight. 1986, the Rocket strikes out 20 people. He wins the Cy Young and the MVP. Bill Buckner's boot helps the Mets win the series. You have Hall of Famers like Tom Seaver and Tony Perez playing their final seasons. Pete Rose, Vida Blue, and Dave Kingman also saw the last action of their storied careers. But Bonds, McGuire, Maddox, and believe it or not, the just recently retired Jamie Moyer all made their MLB debuts in 1986. In music, while Whitney and Madonna dominated the Billboard charts, rock made its biggest impact with Van Halen's 5150, first album of Sammy Hagar, Steve Winwood's Back in the High Life, and Genesis' Invisible Touch. Peter Gabriel and Dire Straits helped continue to revolutionize the music video. The Clash, Black Flag, and the Dead Kennedys all disbanded. We lost Thin Lizzy's Phil Lynott, the band's Richard Manuel, and Metallica's Cliff Burton, Cliff 'em all, to the great Gig in the Sky. But the debut LP from an underground hardcore punk and rap group out of New York City made one of the biggest impacts of the decade. The Beastie Boys' License to Ill was released in November of 1986 and will become the first hip-hop album to top the Billboard 200, cementing rap's place in the mainstream. And that's where we're going to begin our conversation tonight. All right. So,
no sleep
guys,
till Brooklyn.
That's right. It's good to be back, guys. And also, what we're going to talk about tonight, really, we're going to talk about 1986, some things that we were into then, some things that came out in 1986, but we didn't get into them until later. We're going to talk about 1986 in baseball, which was, one of the greatest National League Championship series ever, as well as a memorable World Series. We're going to talk about the uniforms of 1986, and then finally, we're going to show your cards. So we're going to share some 1986 baseball cards at the end of the episode. Before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RockInChew. You can also find this episode and everything else that you'd like to know about Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Chew at rockchew.com. Also, please like us on Facebook, rate us on iTunes. Whatever app you're using to listen to the podcast, please give us a favorable rating or a shitty rating. Doesn't matter. Just give us some. Just tell us how we're doing and what you'd like to hear on the podcast. And thanks for listening. So we'll go ahead and go into 1986 here, guys. Levi would have been the youngest, right? Okay. Yeah. Levi would have been 5. You would have been 5. Okay. Yeah. I was 7. Jonathan was 6. And
you were the wise one, Gabe.
I was.
You showed us the way.
Yes, absolutely. So, let me share just a couple things that about 1986 and music for me, because I think this year, although I had been exposed to some rock and roll, like my dad spun some records, my cousins were really into Van Halen. So I think that my interest in music probably starts with Van Halen. When 1984 came out, my cousin, Levi's cousins, they would listen to it. They would have me come in the room and they want me to do kicks like David Lee Roth, right? So Van Halen really is my introduction, I think, to popular music. Probably like a lot of kids in the Midwest. And 1986 was a really a crossroads for Van Halen, and they took a route that really succeeded for them, as kind of the unthinkable happened, and you had the lead singer of one of the biggest bands in the world leave the band, and then replaced by an established artist in Sammy Hagar, but it was sort of a risky move that paid off. But 1986 for me was more about David Lee Roth than Van Halen, because Eat 'Em and Smile was the first piece of music that I think I independently purchased. right? So I bought the cassette for Eat 'Em and Smile in 1986. I was like a lot of people, Dave had it when he was in Van Halen, and then he had it for his solo record, Crazy from the Heat. Yep. And then he also carried that over into Eat 'Em and Smile. Like his videos are great, So the Yankee Rose video for me, that motivated me to buy Eat 'Em and Smile as really like the first piece of music that I ever bought like independently. Like my dad had bought me Billy Idol's Rebel Yell on vinyl, but I think he kind of drove that purchase a little more than I did because my dad really liked that record and he said like I could pick one out and I had heard the song. But for me, like Eat 'Em and Smile was like I used my money, like I'm sure that like a relative gave me to purchase Eat 'Em and Smile.
Do you happen to remember where you got it? Sam
JR's Music at White Oaks Mall.
Wow.
JR's Music.
Was that independent or was that a chain?
I don't know.
I don't even remember that store.
Yeah,
in the
JR's
mall, it
Music.
seemed like it was always like Sam Goody or Musicland.
Yeah, no, I got it at JR's, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
So did your parents like see the title Eat 'Em and Smile and think of anything? Or is like the old man give you like a pat on the back? He's like, yeah.
Yeah. My dad liked Van Halen. Yeah. So I think he approved of me purchasing Diamond Dave's record.
Oh, yeah. Yankee Rose, that video is classic too.
Yeah. And before I pass the baton here to you guys for any of your selections from 86, when we were talking about this episode, we were hashing it out, and the other big Van Halen related project that came out that year was obviously 5150, which proved to be more commercially successful than Eat 'Em and Smile, and probably, I shouldn't say probably, definitely in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's a better record than Eat 'Em and Smile necessarily, but it's probably a more memorable record. Impactful, certainly. Yeah. And Levi was saying that he didn't like 5150 all that much because he felt like Sammy Hagar was kind of doing a little bit of an impersonation of David Lee Roth.
I thought he was aping. Yeah, he was kind of aping it a little.
Even the way it opens with the Hello Baby is like total
I think a lot of that's true. I think that it was such a risky move to take on Hagar when they were so huge. Like it'd be different if like they put out an album with Dave and it was like it wasn't met with a lot of success.
Yeah.
But 1984 was like hugely successcul.
Yeah, it was.
And just like a year and a half later, you're going to be like, we got this other dude. You know what I mean? Like that was a risky move. And 5150 debuted at number one. But what Levi was saying about Sammy imitating Dave a little bit on that record. Dave couldn't totally divorce himself from Eddie Van Halen because as much as I respect Steve Vai was hired because he could play guitar like Eddie Van Halen.
Absolutely.
That's why Steve Vai was put into David Lee Roth's band.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're both finger tappers, and they're both great guitarists. I mean, Eddie particularly. But yeah, the Van Halen hung over Eat 'Em and Smile still, or Eddie Van Halen at least hangs over Eat 'Em and Smile.
Oh yeah, I agree.
He doesn't play on the record.
He needed kind of like a clone guitarist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to Steve Vai is more than tapping. Like if you listen to some of his solo records, he's a lot more than that. But like
I'm oversimplifying.
He totally filled the role like perfectly.
Yeah.
Like even in the videos and stuff, he was hamming it up. Like some of those videos are just epic.
Well, like Dave wasn't going to hire, like Mark Knopfler as his guitarist. I mean, you need someone flashy, if you're going to be playing alongside Diamond Dave, So I mean, yeah. So yeah, Vi fit the bill definitely. That's for sure. But yeah, and then the other one that I'll just mention is the other album that I was into at the time was "Look What the Cat Dragged In" by Poison. Which came out in '86, but didn't really find success until the following year in '87, and it was huge. But this wasn't the first glam metal, not glam rock, mind you, with all due respect, Brett, CeCe, they weren't the New York Dolls or Mott the Hoople, all right? But they're kind of rooted in that a little bit.
Yeah, there's parts of that.
Yeah. It's when that genre of glam metal really went mainstream. Motley Crue kind of provided the blueprint a little bit, but Poison put all those cards on the table. Slippery When Wet by Bon Jovi was released that year, and while it was a bigger record commercially, its success, kind of garners more appreciation or acknowledgement than Poison's record does. Yeah. And I think the reason that's the case is because Bon Jovi maintained their popularity after that era subsided. Bon Jovi survived the Seattle invasion. I mean, as a touring act, like Bon Jovi, plays stadiums,
Yeah.
I mean, Poison didn't. Granted, Poison didn't, they, as a nostalgia act, they kind of survived, but not like Bon Jovi did, though.
Yeah, I think that Bon Jovi never got totally lumped in with those bands because they weren't as raunchy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, they were a little cleaner. Yeah, I know that's a good way to put it. They were New Jersey instead of L.A. Now, I don't know how much that mattered, but, it's Poison's success, though, with that record, Look What the Cat Dragged In, it really paved the way for the legion of bands that followed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, many of the acts profiled in what's probably my favorite music documentary, or at least one of them, The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years. Most of the bands, many of them, profiled in that documentary can thank Poison for their record contracts or, any brief success that they experienced. I mean, they can probably thank Poison for helping them get laid, I mean... And it's weird because that documentary is called The Metal Years, and Poison and a lot of those similar bands, I don't know, the Bullet Boys and Trickster and,
they kind of got lumped into what was called hair metal.
Yeah. And it's weird because that would be played alongside like what I would consider real metal, Megadeth, Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax.
Yeah.
It was kind of like this uncomfortable... They existed sort of uncomfortably alongside all those harder bands. And also, with Poison, what they did, a lot of veteran hard rockers kind of followed suit, I mean, listen to Ozzy's records during that era, Alice Cooper, Kiss, all of them followed Poison's lead after this album came out. And so my final word is, like them or not, Poison's important. And then I will hand it off to one of you. My Poison soliloquy.
Go for it, Levi.
No, I agree with what you said there. For me, I can't talk about 1986 without talking about MTV, because I had a sister that was 10 years older than me, and our house was kind of divided where it was like a living room and a bedroom on one side, the kitchen in the middle, and then on the other half of the house was our bedrooms, me and my sister, and another living room. So the living room on our
like a 2 living room household. I remember that.
Yes. And so the one living room was basically me and my sisters, and we would watch MTV basically unsupervised all the time. And so I just grew up, with MTV. And so I totally remember when the Addicted to Love video by Robert Palmer came out. I remember it being mind-blowing. Just for the art of it, because you know what I mean? It does have just that quintessential 80s art look with the makeup and the girls and the dancing.
It's awesome. It's so well executed.
Yeah, and I just remember they played it over and over, so I got to see it a lot. And I remember my dad saw it even. It was one of the few videos on MTV my dad saw and approved of.
Dad's head.
We were watching it the other night, and it's funny. Those girls have no idea how to play any instruments, and obviously, they aren't trying to pass it off. But at one point, she's playing the guitar like a bass, she's slapping it. And the drummer, if you notice, Robert Palmer's always positioned right, totally eclipsing the drummer. because she has no idea what she's doing. At one point, they do like a close up for a drum fill, but it's like man hands, like drum fill is totally just like fingernail
There's
polish.
Like hair, you see the hair on the backs of the balls.
Yeah, it's amazing. An amazing video though. Yeah,
dude, it was, and it was at a time when MTV pretty much ruled the world. It was at a time when like radio was kind of waning in popularity a little bit, and like MTV just took it to the next level. It was like, you know what I mean? Everything was an MTV exclusive, or we've got an exclusive interview, or you know what I mean? So
it made you want to watch it all the time.
Exactly. It was literally like on all the time at my house. Yeah. And so I remember that, and then I also remember getting introduced into, obviously, at the time, everything was going on. There's the pop, the new wave, the metal, all of the new stuff. And along came a couple of videos, and I'll talk about them both real quick. One of them was the Georgia Satellites, and it was the video for Keep Your Hands to Yourself. and it's just a classic video of them like rolling around in the back of a peach truck or something, playing guitar like down in Georgia.
Yeah, Rick Richards, man, tearing it up.
Yeah, and so I saw that video, and then they would also play, and this was it seemed like it was on a bunch of shows or in movies, but I remember the video for Timbuk 3, their song "Gotta Wear Shades."
Oh yeah.
And Timbuk 3 was like I don't know if they were husband wife, but they were a male female duo that were together, and they were from, I believe, Wisconsin, Madison, and it was like kind of stripped down like the Georgia Satellites. It was like some guitars and some harmonica and just kind of a driving beat. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like it seemed like it was almost a rebirth of like older sounds.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a cowpunk kind of going mainstream a little bit.
A little bit for sure. And with the Georgia Satellites, that song, I mean, is pretty much like a straight-ahead blues song, and it's amazing to think that became popular and was a hit in 1986.
Yeah, alongside Poison and Janet Jackson.
And so, like, to be introduced to like another side of that through MTV, I definitely appreciate. Yeah. And I just got to say, to end these guys, Timbuk 3, that song has one of the best lines, I think, in rock and roll. And it's, I got a job waiting after my graduation, 50th a year will buy a lot of beer. And I think that was like totally the Budweiser spring break party mentality of like thousands of kids in the 80s.
Yeah, you know, like 86, 87 graduations, everybody's raising their glass to that line.
Oh, yeah.
Singing it at the top of their lungs.
Yeah.
Cracking up over Spuds kids.
Yeah, that was definitely the stuff I appreciated at that time, for sure.
Yeah, for me, it was also the videos, and Peter Gabriel. I think what he did for that So album with Sledgehammer and Big Time. Watching those today, those things still hold up. Sledgehammer, especially on YouTube, it's nice and high def, and it looks awesome. It just looks real great. And actually, we were watching one of Madonna's videos too. From that era, and that looked awesome. So some of these have transferred to YouTube really well, and but what Gabriel was doing with the stop action animation, he used Wayne White, who also worked with on Pee-wee's Playhouse, and it's just a captivating even today. So those are definitely worth another watch. Watch Springsteen's Glory Days. It's kind of a cheesy video of him like trying to look like a pitcher throwing his
pitcher. Yeah,
it's cinematography.
Actually, that I believe that one Kevin Costner movie was just based off that Springsteen video.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner's career as an actor, I think. Yeah.
The Dire Straits, what they were doing with like Money for Nothing. Even Aha's Take on Me. It's an awesome video. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Talking Heads were doing a ton of stuff. ZZ Top's Rough Boy is an interesting video. If you watch like the dismembered heads and body parts playing, like it's the truck spaceship.
Oh yeah, dude, they had they were given boatloads of money for videos. That same year, I believe in '86, they had the Sleeping Bag video, and I think I mentioned it on an episode maybe before.
Afterburn. Yeah.
But dude, the sleeping bag video has the chick from Nightmare on Elm Street in it, and then like another actor, and it's basically like a mini movie. And it's like, how much money did they blow on this?
Yeah, you can tell. Yeah, they're trying to hit their quota. Like, well, we better spend it all.
Right? They're like, they won't give us any next time if we don't.
And I like shortly after that era ended. When I became sort of like more into like the 70s, I looked back on it like kind of, I looked back on it sort of scornfully, and now it's like, man, that's so awesome that all that happened. I mean, it was just stuff like that just doesn't happen anymore. Like, like that like the video medium just will never capture anybody's attention like it did back then.
No, it takes a band like OK Go with like a bunch of choreography or some long form piece that Beyonce does to really gain people's attention.
And the shelf life for that is shorter.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You aren't
because it's gimmicky. A lot of that.
Yeah, because something else that's viral will come along. And it'll supplant it.
Right. And another fun one is Bowie and Jagger doing "Dancing in the Street." That's a hoot.
It is.
Yeah,
there's a part in that video where they look like they're about to jump each other's bones.
Yeah, I kept waiting for them to kiss.
You can tell there's like a sexual energy. You're like, whoa, guys.
Yeah, kept waiting for them to kiss.
Yeah.
We'll be posting. We've already posted a couple videos on Facebook.
Yeah.
We'll be posting videos from 1986 throughout the week after this goes live.
Yeah. Well, segueing, we talked about what we liked then, and we probably still like some of that now, or at least appreciate it. But talking about things that we've discovered since then, and that we listen to now, things that came out in 1986. What about you, Jonathan? What have you discovered that came out in 1986 that you appreciate now? That you probably didn't when you were 6 years old.
Yeah, well, I didn't appreciate anything real great when I was 6. Even my first forays into music were pretty questionable.
Other than like a Capri Sun, maybe.
His first
Super
great
Mario
thesis
Brothers
was on New Order.
No, my favorite song was the Super Mario Brothers theme. Since then, I've started to appreciate guys like Dwight Yoakam and his debut album, Guitars, Cadillacs, etc. Is awesome. Just 8 or 9 songs that he put out on that album, including an awesome cover of Ring of Fire. He brought that back that Bakersfield sound. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've really grown to appreciate over the years. As a kid, I didn't really like any country until I kind of discovered Waylon Jennings in college, I guess. So that was one thing. And actually, when they re-released that, there's a live show associated with it, live from the Roxy of all places. And
that was his thing. Like, he was kind of like the guy who would play the Roxy and the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like somehow he managed that balancing act.
Yeah, phenomenal. And the crowd ate him up, man. Just ate him up.
Oh, yeah.
But on the flip side of that, though, is lately, so I code for a living. I write HTML, and I've realized that to get in the zone, I can listen to kind of more electronic music. And so I've been listening to a lot of Kraftwerk lately. And Kraftwerk's Techno Pop came out in '86. And I hadn't listened to it until I was researching 1986 albums. And that one is choice for me. I highly recommend Kraftwerk's Techno Pop. That is definitely a recent taste I've grown accustomed to.
Nice. I've not heard a lot of their 80s stuff. I have their like late 70s, the Autobahn record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my opinion, you can't go wrong with it. It's it gets you in the zone.
Well, to kind of go along with your Dwight Yoakam, one of the records I really like that I do remember seeing, so along with MTV, basically in my house, the kitchen divided it. In our living room, MTV was always on. The other living room where my dad and mom were, TNN, the original TNN, the Nashville Network.
Not CMT.
So, no. The Nashville Network. And so I got to see like that Guitars Cadillacs video they would play all the time. And another video they introduced at the rotation around that same time in '86, and the record was from then. I think it was in March that year. It's Steve Earle's Guitar Town. And it's considered his debut, but he had been kind of kicking around and playing, obviously.
Been a songwriter
for time, yeah. And as a kid, you know, it's hard to, you know, you can't get into songs like Good Old Boys, you know, Getting Tough and stuff like that. But like later, you start to appreciate the lyrics and stuff as you get older, and that is such a great album and a great introduction to Steve Earle if you've never heard it. And the other big one from that year that I got into later, and it was probably like 10 years later, so around maybe 96 that I got into them more, and that was Metallica. And so Master of Puppets from 86 is just epic. Obviously that song Master of Puppets, and then Battery I think's on that one as well. And then it was actually like a great year for metal.
Peace Sells. Megadeth's Peace
Sells was there, and then Rain and Blood by Slayer was released that year. So, like, those albums are kind of like a trifecta of metal that it just, like, burst open the whole scene for heavier music to get money from record companies.
The big four were all pumping out good music at that time, you know.
Yeah.
So Among the Living came out in '87, so.
The dude, guitarist from Slayer,
Harry King.
Yeah, he played on Licensed to Ill.
Oh, did
he? Yeah. Where it's the is it the No Sleep Till Brooklyn video? Where they're imitating all the hair metal. Yeah. And I think he's in the beginning of that, and he plays on it on the tune because I'm sorry, who was it? Rick Rubin that produced Licensed to Ill?
Yeah, he produced Licensed to Ill.
He was producing Slayer at the same time, and
sure,
that was the connection.
Right,
crazy,
good stuff, man. So that would have been Cliff's last record with the band, right? Master of Puppets would have been,
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It
would make sense. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, for me, gosh, you know, and I already talked about Poison, so you can see that I was listening to Poison and not New Order in 1986. But you know, a lot of the music that was dubbed, I don't know, sort of college rock, or a lot of the music that was like critically acclaimed, because certainly New Order was a veteran band at that point. You know. They had been around for a few years, you know, after you know, Joy Division disbanded, sort of turned into New Order. But you know, that record Brotherhood to me is it's got a and it's something I have to admit I just started listening to them within probably the last 5 years. You know, I kind of always just thought it was something that was like, you know, was too cool for me. You know what I mean? To like New Order. But no, Brotherhood's great. It's really poppy kind of, and it's got a little bit of the electronic sound to it. But it's just really well done. It's well crafted. Like even, you know, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, while it's fun, it kind of sounds dated. And, you know, I wouldn't say Brotherhood sounds like it came out last week, but it holds up really well.
It does.
I think.
It does. Yeah, I just listened to it for the first time today, and I thought it definitely holds up.
Yeah, and I think the sound that they're doing has influenced a lot of bands that have come out within the last 5, you know, like maybe about 10 years that have really emerged within the last 10 years. I think that sound has. So I've certainly appreciated them more in recent years. And another one, Love and Rockets Express came out that year. I think that's a really, really solid record. And also Elvis Costello, who growing up, I just kind of thought he was the guy that was on the poster in Damone's room on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And, you know, I've always appreciated him, you know, like, but in 1986, he released Blood and Chocolate, and he, I think, had gotten back with the Attractions, had gotten back with, the band that he had been playing with.
Well, he released 2 records that year, even.
Two records
King
that
of
year.
America as well, yeah.
Right. Blood and Chocolate was the one I like a lot. And it, it's got kind of a little bit of his classic sound. Like it sounds, even though it came out in the 80s, it kind of sounds like it could be one of his late 70s records. When
absolutely,
something like right after, before like This Year's Model or something like that. It's got that sound to it. So I think it's a really great record, and I've learned to appreciate him and all his diverse talents. He's a real chameleon.
Both of those, King of America and Blood and Chocolate, I mean, a great example of 2 different sounds he can get within a given year, and totally awesome production, spot on.
Yeah, Elvis is the king. He's a talented cat, and I wish, growing up, I maybe I would have appreciated him a little bit more. But all things in due time, makes me appreciate him even more now. So
there was one more video I forgot to mention, and it's by this band called the New York Mets. and it changed my life when I saw it on Tuesday. Let's Go Mets Go is an amazing feat in athletic dancing and New York City cameos.
Yeah.
It's synchronized lip syncing.
Yeah.
Like, they should definitely win an award for that.
And Joe Piscopo's involved.
Well, and he takes it over the top. It's over the
because
top.
Of course he is.
Yeah, 1986. This is Piscopo's world, baby.
Hell yeah, it was.
You see Howard Stern at the end. We're talking 1986 Howard Stern.
Yeah. It's that video is like it's so inferior to Super Bowl Shuffle, but it's probably much superior to that shitty video that the Patriots put out in response to Super Bowl Shuffle. We are the Patriots. It's better than that. Yeah.
It is. It is very entertaining.
Yeah, it's cheese to the highest levels. I love the fact that it just seems like they were trying to be actually goofier than the Super Bowl Shuffle in parts of it, just because it's some of the absurdity of some of the lip syncing and the stuff that they're doing, and Gary Carter's playing with a cardboard cutout of himself, hiding behind
Carter's
it.
hamming it up. I love the beginning when they approach the kids, flipping the cards, and it's Dwight and Gary.
We'll post this video online for all the viewers to see. What is this game? It's like they're playing Pong.
Yeah,
I
don't know what the game is.
But it's they're going so fast, it's war. They somehow know one's better than the other. Right as they're flipping them.
I think they were just waiting for the Mets card. I think that was the point of the game.
Maybe.
I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. You have to look up this card. It could change my life.
Well, talking about the Mets of '86. That's certainly I guess obviously the Bears winning it, but that's the sports team of that year.
But it's interesting because you talk more about the Red Sox losing than the Mets winning.
That's a good point.
I guess as a Red Sox fan for a long time, that was the case for me, at least.
The Buckner error overshadowed the Mets' victory, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. That was kind of. I think there's a book out. There's a couple books out about the Mets, the '86 Mets. I want to read that one, sort of about all the debauchery.
Ron Darling's got one coming out soon. Yeah, if it's not out already.
There's one called 1 Year Dynasty, the Mets, and that's certainly kind of what that team was.
Well, they had won 95 games the year before.
Yeah.
Then they won 108 in '86. That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They were the team, man.
They won that division by 20 plus games.
Yeah, and now at the time it was, I think when Gooden and Strawberry really started to slip into, their drug-induced periods where they were constantly getting suspended and in car accidents and things like that. Some of some of the shine. The team, really started to crack. And, we were also living in the throes of the Just Say No era. So, all those horror stories, about drugs and were really coming to light. And, the Mets, they'll have that attached to them as well, with Strawberry and Gooden and Hernandez. And
Hernandez went there to try to clean up, too. I mean,
yeah.
Yikes. Yeah. That had to be tough. Man, Hernandez admits to like 3 years of blow, so he's going to the Mets, and the Mets are just like having a big party.
Well, yeah, the debauchery of that team, like Gabe said, it's just amazing that they got away with what they got away with for as long as they did, or that nobody died or got incarcerated for longer than what they did.
So Ron Darling says,
Strawberry. The struggles for Strawberry and Gooden persisted after that year, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and it's unfortunately it kind of marred both those guys' careers, which as everybody says, I think could have been Hall of Famers, those two. But it's a hell of a team, and it would make a kick-ass movie. I know.
Oh, an amazing movie. Sure. I mean, think about this. Ron Darling says that they're taking amphetamines before the games, and when they sometimes if the batters are starting to come down in the later innings, for some reason they go before they're at bat, they go into the clubhouse, shotgun a beer, and then go bat. And because apparently shotgunning the beer just like gets the amphetamines going again or something. Yeah. And it's like this perfect level for him to just, I guess, hit a double.
I've got a feeling Mike Trout's probably not doing that.
No.
I'm going to go out on a limb.
Well, yeah, and so we have to mention the classic shot of, I don't know if it's from that season, but of Keith Hernandez just smoking a cigarette in the dugout.
Dude's trying to stay straight.
He's like, just hit a double. Now I'm smoking a cigarette.
He's like, God, anything. It's as long as I stay off of the amphetamines, It's he's doing what he can.
Yeah.
God bless him.
Right? Gotta love back in the day when you could smoke in the dugout.
We had Mookie Wilson on that team too, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was.
He was the one that got the hit. The big hit, right?
The big hit, yeah. He was, I think he was like a fourth outfielder there, because George Foster was on that team, and then they released him later in the year.
Yeah.
And Mookie Wilson and Kevin Mitchell.
Yeah.
Kevin Mitchell was on that team.
We're on the bench.
One of the greatest baseball names of all time there in Mookie Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A great name.
Well, another guy, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, and Howard Johnson was also on that bench.
Ojo,
yeah. Roger McDowell, I think, on that team too.
Dude, Roger McDowell that year, he had 14 wins and 22 saves.
Wow.
That's remarkable.
You don't see that very often. Yeah. Well, another guy in '86 that gave the Mets trouble, even though not enough trouble to keep him from going to the World Series, was Mike Scott. And the Mike Scott actually, up until 1982 or the '83 season, I think, played for the Mets. So can you guys imagine if they wouldn't have made that trade and they had Gooden and Scott atop that road? They didn't need him. They still won. But if they had Gooden and Mike Scott in 1986 at the top of your rotation,
and not to mention Ron Darling was actually a little bit better than Gooden that year.
Yeah, I mean, if you had those three, Jesus.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, essentially, it would just it would knock Rick Aguilera out of that rotation, and that entire rotation would have had ERAs below 3.5.
Yeah, and all three guys that were so good that year, but couldn't really sustain their success. Not to say Darling didn't have a good career, and Gooden didn't have moments of having,
his brilliance,
flashes of brilliance after that.
They just put it all together, everybody put it together for that year.
Yeah, but by the time the 90s arrived, Scott had fallen apart, so it was kind of just really a moment in time. Scott, in the late 80s, he's probably the best pitcher in baseball in 1986.
And he shut down the Mets for the Mets the Mets won the NLCS.
But
4 games to 2. But it was Mike Scott who beat him those 2 times.
Yeah. Yeah. So just really kind of a brief but brilliant career for Mike Scott.
Yeah, I guess he had developed a split finger fastball in the off season, and before that, or the '85 year, and that enabled his productivity to go through the roof throughout the late '80s.
We would have had him and Nolan Ryan in the same rotation, right? Yeah. Right? 86 Astros, I think.
86 Astros, yeah.
Yeah. Oof. Look out.
But yeah, and so the Mets accused him of scuffing.
Yeah. They accused him of scuffing, so that kind of further taints his career, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it was almost sour grapes on the Mets' part.
Yeah.
Just to be like, to try to blame it on something.
I'm sure the Ross stuff was still there, I mean, he had some tricks up his sleeve, but
yeah, it's to me, like, scuffing the ball and messing with the ball a little bit like that is like how guys maybe have pine tar a couple inches too high on their bat than what they should.
Yeah.
I don't think either one of those two things makes that player be able to be how they are. You know what I mean?
I think George Brett still would have been pretty good.
Yeah, I think George Brett was going to still hit that home run, whether or not that pine tar was there. I think Mike Scott was still going to be Mike Scott without having to mess with the ball. Yeah. But
But yeah, Scott was in the Mets' heads because I think it was Carter who asked the ump to check the ball. Carter had 2 strikes on him in that first game that Scott was pitching in the NLCS, and after the second strike, Carter asked the ump to check the ball, and he checked it and just threw it back to Scott, and it was all downhill for the Mets from there as Scott just set him up and knocked him down.
Well,
as a Cubs fan, they were awful that year. They were 70 and 90. Just another forgettable 80s Cubs season.
Yeah. Well, guys, I was thinking of the Astros. Beautiful jerseys, in my opinion, in 1986 for the Astros. I'll always like those. But before we get into the baseball cards, a lot of baseball cards players are sporting batting practice jerseys. I assume that's when a lot of the photographs were taken for the cards. Do you guys have any? Yeah, or spring training? Yeah. Do you guys have any favorite spring training or batting practice jerseys from that era? Because right now, I think a lot of baseball's best looking tops are the alternate jerseys.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. I like the solid team color. I like the Astros one a lot right now. I like the there's some of the baby powder blues that the Royals wear are kind of resurrected. I think those are oftentimes a team's best. I'd even prefer if those replace the road jerseys. That's just how
the drab.
As far as the '80s, I really like some of the A's. They had usually either solid green or solid yellow, and they were that type of material where they were like basketball jersey, baseball jersey.
Mesh.
That mesh. Mm-hmm. The Mariners had some really nice looking blue ones back then.
All nice and snug fitting too.
Right?
Yeah, and I was reading in Dan Epstein's book, and he talks about in the 70s how the A's and the Pirates really pioneered this idea of taking the jerseys to some different places and actually just wearing pullovers for the game rather than having a button up. And also have tons of different color combinations, and so that after the Pirates, the We Are Family, and the A's had their run in the 70s. So in the 80s, I think most teams had embraced that and gave you all of these batting practice jerseys, these kind of pullovers.
The Cubs had a solid blue pullover in 84, 85, around there.
Yeah, not a bad looking jersey. White Sox had a red one.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, with just the the all caps socks across the chest. Yeah,
and they're better to wear as fans. They're better than the button up because the button up is almost like a dress shirt. It's really big.
Yeah,
but just to wear the pullover, we can pull that off. Yeah, I have a Robin Yount one that's a pullover from Mitchell and Ness that I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah. Well, that said, guys, it's time to show your cards. why don't we go ahead and lay these on the table here? Levi, what do you got?
Well, I'm gonna go with one of my main men from back then. Not a Cub. He's in an alternate jersey. I'm assuming it's a batting practice jersey. It's the 86 Topps Cal Ripken card. Let me pull up, see if you guys can see it here.
Black jersey.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
I didn't have my camera there. There we go. And so, yeah, it's a black alternate jersey, red or orange Orioles, and like orange scallops, I guess. I don't know what you'd call them on these sleeves. But just a great looking card, and it's just 86 Topps, man. You got to love it. It's just classic.
Yeah.
It's 55 Chevys and 86 Topps.
It's a Dwight Yoakam song.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the 86 Topps are, as I mentioned during our most recent episode, it's really when I got into cards too. I don't know if I had the whole set, but I had probably pretty close. So it was an important year for me. Yeah,
and I think some of my first cards were 86 Topps hand-me-downs, as I couldn't buy my own cards, I think, till I was 87. So
right.
Mine is also an 86 Topps, but with a twist. This is George Bell. You notice the red top.
I know what that is.
You know what that?
I know what that.
This is the bottom of the box. So the box of cards would have, as many people know, 4 cards on the bottom, and then you would have to cut them out.
Yeah, and that looks like a pretty good cut job there.
This wasn't bad.
Use an X-Acto knife on that or something.
Yeah. So my brother Sean probably cut this out.
And that was when he was spelling his name with a J.
With the J, right. And I tried to look up on his Facebook page, on his Wikipedia page, if there was any comment on that. There isn't, when he went from J to GEO, which actually brings up a point today where baseball is trying to get teams who have Latino players, all of them, to put the correct accents on their jerseys. And to get these names more exact, because I'm gonna assume, I don't know for sure, but Jorge, I don't know if it's pronounced Jorge or it's just George, changed to GEO, probably pressure maybe from whatever team had him at the time. I don't know if it was the White Sox or whatever.
Or agent,
or an agent to make them maybe a little bit more marketable, because George Bell could be anybody, could be white, black, Latino, doesn't matter.
They're like, you're going to be famous someday. You got to put GEO on that.
Yeah.
Right?
Or like Jorgie Bell.
Yeah, what? Right. So, but he is sporting the blue pole over there. I think this is probably spring training. Gabe, it's got those nice holes in there to breathe, and a little blue and white and gray trim on there, and that classic Blue Jays hat.
I just have money to blow someday. Maybe I'll become a mid-'80s batting practice jersey collector.
Nice.
Be yes, I'm looking for the Kent Herbrack. My prize.
Alan Trammell's on the way.
Nice. Levi wears his Teddy Higuera on Wednesdays.
Ooh, nice. Yes.
But anyway.
Nice.
Well, mine, I've also got a Blue Jay, actually, and I'm looking through older cards when we do the Show Your Cards. Most of them I remember. I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of remember collecting that card or coming across it in my collection. This one, I don't remember at all until I found it earlier today. This is pre-Japan Cecil Field.
Oh, yeah, I had that card, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. I guess I just remember... I know that he played on Toronto before he went to Japan, and then he came back from Detroit, hit all those home runs, right? But I don't remember this card, and obviously until I saw it earlier today. So yeah, this is Cecil, also in what looks to be the batting practice jersey.
Yep.
And
that was pretty beat up. Was that hiding in your couch or something?
Yeah, this is not even near mint. This is I don't even know if it's even in good condition. Yeah,
I don't think they would grade it. That's circulated, bro.
Circulated.
Yeah. Right. A lot of them look like I used them as throwing stars at one time. So
corners kind of round.
Yeah. Right. So that's Cecil. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just want to say that if I'd known there was some kind of form of gambling game with baseball cards when I was a kid, I could be in an alley right now.
right?
Things could have totally turned out.
Waiting to play Slapjack McDowell or
Like,
whatever the game is.
come on, I gotta flip cards, man. I need to flip cards.
Levi just betting it all on
I'm letting it ride on Jesse Orozco.
Right? Come on, Chico Walker. Come on, Chico Walker. Ah!
Oh. Chili Davis deciding your fate. Anyway.
Right, yes.
Ow. All right, guys. So,
1986.
good times. 1986.
We'll be posting
Everybody
stuff
out there,
all week.
tell us. Everybody
Yeah.
listening, tell us what your favorite 1986 things are. Tell us what we didn't get.
Hashtag Field Guide 1986.
Yes, there we
Yep.
go. There
you
we
go.
needed a hashtag. Hashtag Field Guide 1986. 1986 too. It's been fun. You know, kind of a better place to revisit than I think a lot of people.
I
imagined
learned a
it would
lot.
Be. Yeah,
It gave me more hope about that era.
yeah,
Right?
absolutely. It wasn't too bad. So for everybody, again, hashtag Field Guide 1986. Also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RockInChew. Go to rockchew.com to find previous episodes and links to all kinds of cool things. Also, please rate us on iTunes or any other podcast application that you get your rock and roll Shin-Soo Chew.
We're on
tell
Stitcher.
all your friends.
We're on
as
Stitcher,
well.
by the way.
We're on Stitcher.
Yeah.
Yes. So you can check us out there. We're on Downcast as well. So yeah. Any way you want to listen to us, just listen. Until next time, we'll see everybody later. Have a good night.
Peace.